Imagine this. You're standing on the edge of everything you've ever known, looking at your current self. You're comfortable, you're familiar, but deep inside, something's whispering, is this all? Is this really who I am? You've lived with this version of yourself for so long, but the truth is, you've outgrown it. It's not enough anymore. This version of you, the one that has survived but not thrived, the one that has settled for mediocrity, is the weak version. What if I told you that the greatest version of yourself is locked behind this current state, that you are capable of more than you've ever allowed yourself to believe, but the key is in breaking away from who you think you are now. That means you have to kill the version of you that's been holding you back. Let that sink in. The only way forward is to rebuild from scratch. Not just physically, not just emotionally, but mentally. The version of you that is complacent, that gets distracted by short-term pleasures, that makes excuses when faced with challenges, that person needs to go. You cannot move forward without actively shedding the skin of your old self. Now, before you think this sounds extreme, think about it. Every day you stay in the comfort of your old self is a day you're choosing to stay small. You tell yourself, I'm doing my best, but your best is an illusion. It's the best of who you were yesterday. And if you keep holding on to that version, your future will never arrive. To truly rebuild yourself, you need to undergo a process of neuroplasticity, changing the very wiring of your brain. It's about shifting your identity. That weak version, it's a result of old patterns, old habits, old limitations. You know they don't serve you anymore, yet you continue to let them dictate your actions. The key is to realize that your current self, your current habits, and your current way of thinking are simply survival mechanisms. They kept you safe, sure, but safe doesn't lead to greatness. Safe doesn't push you to your potential. The weak version of you is trapped in a cycle of mediocrity, where effort is half-hearted, goals are unchallenged, and the growth you're capable of is stunted. That's not living, that's existing. You can't change what you don't see. To break free from the weak version of yourself, you need to have a vision that's so compelling, so clear, that it pulls you forward. This vision has to be bigger than your fears, stronger than your doubts, and it needs to ignite the desire for growth every day. To kill the weak version of yourself, it starts with one crucial thing: responsibility. You are responsible for every action, every thought, every outcome. No more blaming the world, your circumstances, or anyone else. Take full ownership. The moment you start doing that is the moment you begin to detach from your past self, the moment you start to break the chains. But here's the catch: rebuilding is never a smooth road. It's painful, it's uncomfortable, and it requires you to face your deepest fears, your insecurities, and your flaws. You have to confront the truth about who you are right now, and that truth might sting. It might force you to look at the parts of yourself that you've neglected, the parts you've been avoiding. But this is the only way forward. You have to face the hard truths to let go of the weak version of you. Understand this: strength doesn't come from comfort, it comes from embracing discomfort, from pushing through the resistance that holds you back, from finding the courage to do what you've never done before. You will fall, you will fail, but that's part of the process. Every failure is a step closer to shedding the weak version of you, and stepping into something much stronger, much more capable. So here's the challenge: do the work every day, get up earlier, train harder, learn more. Step out of your comfort zone. Do things that scare you, because those are the things that force you to grow. When you feel tired, when you feel like giving up, that's when you push harder. If you want a version of you that is truly powerful, truly unstoppable, then you need to burn away the weakness inside you and rebuild yourself from the ground up. Now, I want you to ask yourself, are you ready to kill the weak version of you? Are you ready to step into the fire of transformation, knowing that on the other side is a version of yourself that is beyond your wildest dreams? Because if you are, the only thing left is to start, and it starts now, not tomorrow, not next week, but right now. The weak version of you is already on its way out. What will you build in its place? Imagine looking in the mirror and seeing someone you've known your entire life. That person has been with you through thick and thin, through the highs and lows, and despite all the challenges, they've always managed to survive. But here's the catch: surviving isn't thriving, and deep down, you can feel it, the whisper that says there's more. You can be more. But this version of you, the one that's comfortable, the one that operates on autopilot, is not enough anymore. This version is weak. Now, I know it might be hard to hear, but the truth is, this version of you is holding you back. This person has been built on old habits, old beliefs, and outdated coping mechanisms that were designed to keep you safe, not to help you grow. Your brain over time has adapted to those old patterns because it's efficient. It's easier to stick with what you know, even if it means staying in mediocrity. This weak version of you isn't necessarily doing anything wrong. It's just not doing enough to propel you toward the person you're meant to be. You've been living in a comfort zone, a place where things are predictable, where there's no risk, no growth, and no breakthrough. It's this comfortable familiarity that has allowed you to stay stuck in a cycle of low expectations. You've convinced yourself that this is enough, that surviving day to day, getting by, and maybe even achieving small wins, is the goal. But deep down, you know it's not. There's a version of you that's waiting to emerge, one that operates with intention, one that challenges the limits you've accepted, and one that pushes you to become something far greater than your present self. That weak version of you, the one that doubts your potential, that avoids discomfort, that clings to old, limiting beliefs, it has to go. It's time to take a hard look at yourself and recognize that the person you've been is simply not enough to achieve what you truly want. It's not enough to just exist. You were meant to do more, to be more, and to experience more. But to do that, you must confront the reality of your current self. You can't change what you won't acknowledge. You can't grow unless you're willing to look at the weaknesses, the complacencies, and the habits that have been holding you back for years. It's time to let that weak version die, so you can build something stronger. To get to where you want to be, you have to understand something fundamental. You can't keep going down the same path and expect different results. Growth doesn't happen by accident, and the life you want, one that's full of purpose, power, and achievement, can't emerge from your current self unless you actively choose to change. Change is not something that just happens when you wait for the right time or when the stars align. It happens when you decide right now that you're not going to let your past self dictate your future. You've got to understand that the version of you that's comfortable, that's settled, and that's been getting by, it has a price. It's easy to stay in the place you know, to fall back on old patterns, to rely on the mechanisms that helped you survive up until this point. But survival doesn't lead to greatness, it leads to stagnation. And when you're stagnant, you stop growing. Your brain, your body, your entire being starts to atrophy because the system doesn't have the stimulus it needs to expand. Rebuilding yourself means deciding that who you were is no longer enough. You must be intentional in your efforts to evolve. It's about finding a vision for your life that's compelling enough to make every sacrifice, every moment of discomfort worthwhile. If that vision is not strong enough to pull you forward, if it's not exciting enough to drive you through the moments of resistance, then the weak version of you will keep winning. It'll keep you in your comfort zone. It'll keep you small. It'll keep you safe. But here's the thing. That version of you that has been comfortable isn't what you're capable of. You're capable of far more. And the only way to unlock that potential is by deciding that you won't settle for what's easy, what's known, and what's familiar. You have to aim for more. You have to create a vision that's so much bigger than the life you're currently living that it pulls you into action every single day. When you commit to rebuilding yourself, when you choose to actively change, that's when your real potential starts to unfold. Your brain starts to rewire itself to support this new vision. New connections are formed. New habits are created. You stop operating on autopilot and start taking charge of every aspect of your life. The weak version of you is no longer in control. The vision you create takes its place, guiding every decision, every effort, and every action you take toward the life you're meant to live. But this won't happen unless you make the conscious, deliberate choice to start that transformation today. Not tomorrow, not next week, but right now. If you want to rebuild yourself, to step into a stronger, more capable version, then you need to understand something powerful. Your brain is not static, it's malleable, it can change. This concept is known as neuroplasticity, and it's the key to your transformation. The brain is constantly rewiring itself based on your experiences, your actions, and even your thoughts. Every time you make a decision, face a challenge, or push through discomfort, your brain forms new neural connections that reinforce that action or thought. But here's the catch. If you continue to operate based on the same patterns, the same behaviors, and the same old beliefs, your brain will simply continue to repeat those same old connections. This is where you have to make a shift. Rebuilding yourself isn't just about changing what you do on the surface, it's about changing the very wiring of your brain. You need to start disrupting those old neural pathways that have kept you locked in a cycle of mediocrity and comfort. Every time you act outside of your usual patterns, your brain begins to form new, stronger connections. When you push through fear, when you take on challenges that feel uncomfortable, you are creating a new version of yourself in your brain. This is how you rewire yourself. This is how you build a new identity, but you can't just wish this change into existence. You have to actively engage in the process. Every small decision you make to step outside of your comfort zone, every time you choose growth over stagnation, you are literally creating new connections in your brain. This means that when you wake up earlier, when you train harder, when you take on more responsibility, your brain is adapting. It's forming new neural pathways that reinforce these new behaviors. This process takes time, but the more consistent you are, the stronger those new neural connections become. Eventually, those new behaviors will feel just as automatic as the old weak version of you ever did. This rewiring isn't just a mental game, it's a physiological one too. When you push yourself, whether it's physically, mentally, or emotionally, your body and brain experience stress, positive stress, that is. This stress triggers the release of chemicals in your brain, like dopamine and brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF, which help your brain grow, adapt, and become more resilient. This is why discomfort is such a powerful tool in transformation. It forces your brain to adapt, to learn, to grow, and to become stronger. So to kill the weak version of yourself and rebuild, you have to embrace the power of neuroplasticity. You have to intentionally engage in new behaviors that challenge your current self. Push yourself into situations where your brain has no choice but to adapt. This is the process of creating a new version of you, one that is capable of achieving more, of handling more, and of becoming someone who thrives in the face of challenges. It all starts in the brain, and every action you take reinforces that transformation. The first step in shedding the weak version of yourself and beginning the rebuilding process is to take full, uncompromising responsibility for your life. This isn't about blaming yourself for past mistakes or feeling guilty about what hasn't worked out. It's about owning every aspect of your reality, acknowledging that you are the creator of your circumstances, and realizing that no one else is coming to save you. The weak version of you thrives on excuses, on passing the blame to external factors. It's my environment, or I didn't have the same opportunities as others, or if only this or that had been different. But let me be clear, these are nothing more than mental shackles. When you begin to own your decisions, your actions, and your results, you reclaim the power to change. Responsibility is not just about saying, I am responsible for what I do. It's about understanding that your thoughts, your habits, and your behaviors are all the result of the choices you've made and the way you choose to interpret your experiences. If you're constantly blaming the external world, then you're giving up your ability to change. You're handing over the keys to someone else. But by taking full responsibility, you're stepping into your personal power, because the moment you claim responsibility is the moment you claim your ability to transform. You need to get real with yourself. The weak version of you is rooted in victimhood. It's rooted in feeling powerless, in believing that life is happening to you, rather than realizing that life is something you create through your choices. When you stop looking for external reasons why things aren't going the way you want, and instead turn inward, you begin to see that you are the common denominator in every situation. You have the power to change your responses, to change your mindset, to choose how you show up each day. Here's the thing, taking responsibility doesn't mean everything will be easy. It doesn't mean that you won't face setbacks, failures, or obstacles. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Taking responsibility means understanding that every challenge, every failure, and every obstacle is something that you must navigate, something you have to learn from, and something you must push through. But when you own your part in the process, you stop making excuses and stop living in the shadow of your weaknesses. You take control of your future and realize that you are the one who shapes it. This doesn't mean blaming yourself for things outside of your control. It means recognizing your agency. It means that no matter what happens, you have the power to choose how you respond. That power is the foundation of growth. The weak version of you holds on to excuses. The strong version of you lets go of them and takes full responsibility for the path forward. This shift in perspective is the first step to unlocking your potential, because once you take responsibility for your life, there's nothing left to stop you from changing it. To truly rebuild yourself, you must face one undeniable truth. Comfort is the enemy of growth. Growth is not found in the places that feel safe and familiar. It's found in the spaces that push you to your limits, that challenge your mind and body to adapt, that force you to confront your weaknesses head-on. And yet so many of us settle into our comfort zones because they feel good. We create routines, habits, and environments that make things predictable, stable, and easy. But here's the thing, Easy doesn't lead to greatness. It doesn't lead to expansion, and it definitely doesn't lead to the next level of your potential. In fact, the more you seek comfort, the more you reinforce the weak version of yourself, the version that avoids the pain of effort, the discomfort of challenge, and the uncertainty of new experiences. It's easy to stay where you are, to do what you know, and to avoid the things that make you feel insecure or unsure. But that is the exact thing keeping you from evolving into something stronger. You have to intentionally step outside that comfort zone. You have to seek discomfort, and not just any discomfort, productive discomfort. When you deliberately push yourself into difficult situations, when you choose the hard path, your brain and body are forced to adapt. This adaptation process is what leads to real growth. It's like training a muscle. The more you stress the muscle, the more it has to repair and grow stronger. The same goes for your mind and body. When you challenge yourself, when you do things that are hard, whether it's learning a new skill, pushing your physical limits, or confronting your deepest fears, you stimulate your brain's neuroplasticity. You are creating new connections, new pathways that didn't exist before. And over time you'll start to realize that the things that once felt impossible, the challenges that once seemed insurmountable, are now just part of your new reality. They don't intimidate you anymore. But here's the reality check. The weak version of you seeks the opposite. It pulls you back into the comfort zone. It tells you that there's no need to push, no need to grow. It gives you every excuse to avoid discomfort. And if you listen to it, you'll stay stuck. You'll stay in the same cycle. You'll stay safe. But safety is not the same as progress. In order to rebuild yourself, you need to look at every situation and ask, what's the next level of discomfort here? What is the next challenge I can embrace? Whether it's pushing yourself physically in the gym, setting a bigger goal at work, or having that uncomfortable conversation you've been avoiding, each of these challenges represents an opportunity for you to step outside the comfort zone and into the realm of true growth. This is where the magic happens. This is how you evolve into the version of yourself you've been waiting for. Growth doesn't come from doing what's easy. It comes from intentionally seeking out the discomfort that forces you to adapt, to stretch, and to become the version of you that can handle more, do more, and achieve more. If you want to break free from the weak version of you, you must stop running from discomfort. You must start running toward it. Embrace the hard, the unknown, the challenging. Because on the other side of that discomfort lies the person you were always meant to be. If you want to completely rebuild yourself, you need to start with a vision, one that pulls you forward, even when you're tired, when you're unsure, and when the challenges seem insurmountable. Without a clear vision, without a compelling reason to push through the discomfort, you'll be at the mercy of your emotions, your doubts, and your habits. And those won't always serve you. The weak version of you doesn't have a strong vision. It drifts, it reacts. It lets life dictate the pace, waiting for the perfect conditions or the right moment. But the version of you that you want to become doesn't wait. It creates its future through intention, clarity, and relentless focus on a bigger goal. This vision needs to be more than just a vague desire for success or happiness. It needs to be specific, it needs to be emotional, and it needs to ignite something deep within you that makes you feel like you must become that person. If your vision is simply, I want to be better, that's not enough. It's too vague, it's too easy to ignore. But if your vision is something like, I will be someone who has the discipline to train every day, no matter how busy or tired I am, because I know that strength will not only shape my body, but my entire life. Now that's something that will pull you out of bed in the morning. That's something you'll fight for. The human brain is wired to pursue goals that are clear, specific, and emotionally engaging. If your vision resonates with you on a deep, visceral level, it will override the resistance that comes with discomfort and uncertainty. This vision gives you a sense of purpose that propels you forward, even when the weak version of you would rather retreat. Your mind, your body, and every fiber of your being begin to align with that vision. And each action you take reinforces the direction you're heading. But it's not just about setting a goal and hoping it'll come to you. You need to make that vision something that becomes part of your identity. You need to see it, feel it, live it. Every choice, every habit, every interaction should be in alignment with that vision. And the truth is, creating this vision requires clarity. You need to carve out the distractions and the noise that pull you in 1,000 directions and focus on what matters most to you. You need to ask yourself, what do I truly want to accomplish? And why is that important? The stronger the emotional connection to your vision, the stronger your commitment will be when things get tough. The weak version of you will always be distracted by the next shiny object or the immediate rewards of comfort. But the version of you that's rebuilding knows that true fulfillment comes from chasing a meaningful vision, and the sacrifice and effort that come with it are worth every moment. It's easy to get distracted by the noise of the world, to be pulled in a million directions. But when you have a vision that's so compelling, so clear, it doesn't just guide you, it shapes your actions, your mindset, your reality. The weak version of you doesn't have a clear path. It gets sidetracked. It lets fear and uncertainty dictate its course. But you are not here to live that way. You are here to create a future that excites you, one that challenges you to become the best version of yourself every single day. When your vision is that powerful, when it resonates with you on a core level, it becomes a magnet that pulls you forward, even when the road is hard, even when the weak version of you whispers, "It's too much. You don't need to go any further." The strength to rebuild yourself comes not from sheer willpower, but from the clarity and emotional connection you have to the vision of who you want to become. When you have that vision, everything else falls into place. Every action you take becomes a step closer to that reality. When you begin the process of rebuilding yourself, you need to understand something critical. Failure is not just inevitable, it's essential to growth. The weak version of you will try to avoid failure at all costs. It will convince you that failure means you're not good enough, that it's a reflection of your inability, that you should retreat and play it safe. But the truth is, failure is one of the greatest tools you have for transformation. It's an essential part of the learning process, and without it, you'll never reach the level of mastery and resilience that's required to build a new version of yourself. Failure at its core is feedback. It's not a final judgment on your abilities, it's a chance to learn, adapt, and improve. Every time you fail, your brain receives new information about what works and what doesn't. It helps you recalibrate, adjust your approach, and come back stronger. And the more you fail, the more you learn, which means the more you're developing the mental toughness and problem-solving skills that will fuel your growth. But here's the problem: the weak version of you fears failure, it avoids it. It makes excuses, it waits for conditions to be perfect, for the right moment to try, and as a result, it never grows. It lives in a state of comfort, avoiding the very thing that would help it evolve. But the version of you that is willing to rebuild understands that failure isn't something to fear. In fact, it's something to embrace as a necessary step on the path to success. When you start seeing failure as part of the journey, something shifts in your mind. You no longer see it as a setback, but as an opportunity to gain insight, to recalibrate, and to improve. Every time you fail, you become more capable, more resourceful, and more resilient. You start to build a level of mental toughness that the weak version of you could never have imagined. The person you're becoming thrives on failure because it knows that every failure is a stepping stone to a new level of mastery. But here's where the real power of failure lies. It forces you to adapt, it pushes you out of your comfort zone, forces you to confront your limitations, and ultimately challenges you to be better than you were yesterday. If you never fail, it means you're not stretching yourself enough. It means you're playing too small. Rebuilding yourself means stepping into the unknown, taking risks, and trying things you've never done before. And in that process, failure is going to happen. It's a certainty. But instead of retreating when you fail, you need to ask yourself, what can I learn from this? How can I adjust my approach to make it better? The weak version of you avoids failure because it's afraid of being judged, of looking incompetent, or of feeling inadequate. But the strong version of you understands that failure is where growth happens. The people who achieve greatness aren't the ones who avoid failure, they're the ones who fail, get back up, and keep moving forward with more knowledge and more determination. You need to get comfortable with the discomfort of failure, because in it lies the key to your transformation. Without failure, you would stay the same. Without failure, you wouldn't learn the lessons necessary to rebuild yourself into the person you're capable of becoming. You cannot rebuild yourself on intensity alone. You can't rely on bursts of motivation, emotional highs, or those rare moments of inspiration where everything feels aligned. That's not where real transformation happens. If you want to kill the weak version of yourself and become something radically stronger, more capable, more disciplined, then you need to anchor your entire process in two things: discipline and consistency. These are the neural scaffolds of real change. They are the daily signals you send to your brain that this new version of you isn't just an idea, it's becoming a reality. Think of it like this: every time you act with discipline, every time you choose to show up, even when you don't feel like it, you're signaling to your nervous system that the new identity you're building is the dominant one. You're strengthening the circuitry that supports who you want to become, and weakening the pathways that reinforce who you used to be. That's how your brain changes. That's how behavior shifts. That's how identity evolves. Not through occasional effort, but through repeated action. The weak version of you is impulsive. It only works when it feels like it. It skips the workout because it's tired. It breaks focus because it's bored. It justifies every excuse with a story that feels true in the moment. I've done enough today. I'll start tomorrow. I deserve a break. That mindset is lethal if you're trying to build anything long-term. Because the truth is, the weak version of you is always looking for a way out. But discipline doesn't ask how you feel. It asks what needs to be done. When you operate from discipline, you're engaging the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for planning, goal-directed behavior, and delayed gratification. And the more you activate that part of your brain, the more control you gain over your impulses, your distractions, your default settings. Over time, discipline becomes automatic. Not because it gets easier, but because your brain has adapted to the demand. You've trained it, like a muscle. And that's where consistency comes in, because you don't get that adaptation without reps. You don't rewire your identity through one perfect day, you do it through hundreds of imperfect ones. You do it through days where you show up even when everything in you is telling you not to. You need to become the kind of person who does the hard things without negotiating, who doesn't let emotional state dictate action. Because discipline isn't about how you feel in the moment, it's about who you're committed to becoming long-term. And consistency, that's your proof. That's how you tell your brain, every single day, this is who I am now. Not once, not when it's convenient. Every day. This is what burns the weak version of you to the ground. Not dramatic declarations, not one-off wins, just the quiet, unrelenting pressure of showing up again and again and again. That's what carves a new self out of the old. There's a critical moment in every transformation, a moment where your brain starts sending the signal to stop. You'll feel it as resistance, hesitation, procrastination, even fatigue. Your mind will start crafting very convincing arguments. You've done enough today, or take a break, you can go harder tomorrow. This is the voice of the weak version of you. And if you don't recognize it, if you don't develop the awareness to call it out in real time, it will win. Every time. Because mental resistance isn't random, it's your brain trying to conserve energy, to protect you from discomfort, to keep you in familiar patterns. It's a biological survival mechanism. But here's the thing, survival is not the goal. Evolution is. Your brain is wired to resist change. It's not designed to optimize your potential. It's designed to keep you safe. Safe from the unknown. Safe from failure. Safe from perceived threat. Even if that threat is just a hard workout, a difficult conversation, or the daily discipline of doing something you don't feel like doing. This is why resistance shows up precisely when you're on the edge of growth. And this is the inflection point, the place where most people pull back. But it's also where the few who are serious about rebuilding themselves lean in. You need to develop the internal skill set to override this resistance. To recognize that just because a thought shows up, just because your mind says, let's stop here, doesn't mean you have to listen. In fact, it's in that exact moment, when your body is tired and your mind starts negotiating, that the breakthrough begins. That's when you teach your nervous system a new rule. We don't stop when it's uncomfortable. We stop when it's done. This is a training process. Every time you push through resistance, you're increasing what neuroscientists call frustration tolerance, your ability to stay calm and focused in the face of mental and emotional discomfort. This is a core component of mental toughness, and it's trainable. But only through deliberate exposure, only by doing hard things over and over again, while staying present. No shortcuts, no hacks, just real neurological adaptation earned through reps of doing what most people avoid. So when you feel that resistance rise, when the weak version of you starts whispering the easy way out, you don't retreat, you don't rationalize. You lean into it, you recognize it as a signal that you're right on the edge of becoming someone new. And that is not the time to stop, that is the time to accelerate. Because every time you do, you are wiring a new identity into your brain. You're telling your system, this is how we operate now. This is who we are. Not the person who stops when it's hard, but the one who keeps going because it's hard. That's where transformation lives. That's how the weak version of you dies, and how the stronger version is forged. Once you've confronted the weak version of yourself, called it out, challenged it, and started to break it down, you can't just leave a void behind. You need to rebuild, and not randomly. You rebuild with precision, with intent, with a strategy that aligns your physiology, your psychology, and your behavior. This isn't just about stopping bad habits or resisting old thought patterns. That's not enough. You have to replace them with stronger, more adaptive systems, new behaviors, new neural pathways, new routines that wire in the identity of the person you're becoming. Rebuilding means taking control of your internal architecture. You don't just want to feel better, you want to be better, more resilient, more focused, more capable. That starts with understanding that your brain adapts based on what you repeatedly do. So the process of rebuilding is at its core a neurological one. Your actions send signals to your brain that say, this is important. When you meditate, train, work with intention, or control your breathing under stress, you're not just managing your state, you're actively strengthening the circuits that regulate attention, discipline, and self-control. These systems are plastic, and they change based on how you engage with the world. Every time you choose to act in alignment with the stronger version of you, even in small ways, you lay down myelin on those neural pathways. You reinforce the circuits that support growth. You build systems, not just willpower. Because systems don't fail the way motivation does. Motivation is emotional. It's fleeting. But systems, habits, structures, protocols, those become part of your identity. You don't have to think about who you are. You live it. You wake up and do the hard things, not because it feels heroic, but because it's simply what you do now. And what's important here is that rebuilding doesn't happen overnight. It happens rep by rep, choice by choice. You stack small wins until the new version of you becomes automatic. And yes, that process is uncomfortable. It requires you to stay consistent when no one's watching, to push when there's no applause, to show up even when you're doubting everything. But that's the price of reinvention. You're not just doing different things, you're becoming a different person. You're designing a new identity that isn't built on excuses or weakness, but on discipline, clarity, and adaptability. The old version of you was reactive. This new version, it's proactive. It's wired for growth. It anticipates resistance and moves through it. It doesn't need to feel ready, it acts anyway. That's the version that handles more pressure, takes on more responsibility, performs under stress, and doesn't back down. Not because it's easier now, but because you've rebuilt the system from the inside out to handle the demands you used to avoid. You kill the weak version by starving it. You rebuild the strong version by feeding it, daily, with action, with presence, with repetition. That's how you make the leap from who you were to who you are becoming. Not through wishful thinking, but through the science of self-directed evolution, moment by moment, decision by decision. That's the work. That's the path.